wanted to deal with a question that came up. I didn't get to. The other day, Jennifer was asking, she is in Monroe, North Carolina, she was asking what happens to a person who dies without hearing of Jesus Christ. And since we're on the theme of death, and death is not morbid for Christians, since we're on that theme, let me answer that question as well. What happens to a person who dies without ever hearing about Jesus Christ? It is certainly one of the most frequently asked questions on the Bible Answer Man broadcast. And, we have a corresponding question here. Will God condemn people to hell for not believing in someone they've never heard of? Well, the answer to those questions is that people are not condemned to hell for not believing in Jesus. They're already condemned because of sin. So the real question becomes not how can God send someone to hell, but how can God condescend to save any one of us? If ignorance is not a ticket to heaven, we can be absolutely certain of that. Ignorance is not a ticket to heaven. If it were a ticket to heaven, the greatest evangelistic enterprise would not be crusade evangelism, but a concerted cover-up campaign, the kind of campaign that would focus on ending evangelism. Get rid of the Bibles, close the churches, and soon no one will hear of Jesus Christ, and everyone will be on their way to heaven. It should be emphasized that everyone has the light of both creation and conscience. So no matter where you are, you have a way of knowing about God. So in truth, there is no ignorance in the real sense of the word. We should also recognize that God is not a capricious God. So if we respond to the light that we have, God will give us more light. And Paul makes that plain when he says, from one man he made every nation of men, that they may inhabit the entire earth. And then he determined the time set for them and the exact places where they should live. And then Paul says God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. So God has given us light. The question is, are we going to respond to the light? Are we going to reject the light? So getting back to the question, what happens to a person who dies without ever hearing of Jesus? The answer to that question is, it's not the absence of light that damns, it is the despising of light that damns. And the beautiful thing is, as I quoted from Paul, we all have light. God gives all of us light. Sometimes that light is the light of creation that we can respond to, and sometimes that light is the light of Christ that we can respond to. But if we respond to light, God will give us more light. He wants us to have intimacy with him. Of course, some say that those who lived before the time of Christ were saved by keeping the law, but the Scripture says they're not saved in that way at all. The Bible from first to last demonstrates that the saved throughout history come to faith in exactly the same way, by grace alone, through faith on account of Christ. The Apostle Paul quoted the Old Testament extensively to drive home the reality that no one has been or ever will be declared righteous by observing the law. And Paul pointed to Abraham, the father of the Jews, to prove that salvation comes through faith apart from the works that we perform. If in fact Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. Because the Scripture says Abraham believed God, it was credited to him as righteousness. Jesus Christ, of course, is in whatever epoch of time the substance that fulfills the types and the shadows of the Old Testament. Each year, the Jews celebrated the Passover to keep them focused on the one who was to come to die for their sins. And the book of Hebrews is beautiful in saying that the law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming, not the realities themselves. Bottom line, Jesus Christ stands at the apex of history, So just as people today look back in history to Christ's sacrifice on the cross, so too people who lived before the time of Christ look forward to his sacrifice for them. The scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel to Abraham beforehand, saying, "In you all the nations will be blessed." That comes, of course, from Paul's writing in Galatians. So Jennifer, the person who dies without ever hearing of Jesus Christ, remember, it's not the absence of truth that damns. It is the despising of the way, the truth, and the life that damns.